Okay, folks, we're going to get ready to get started here. You can find your corner to stand in or seat if you were here early enough. With regard to the sign-in sheet, that was really intended for the public speakers just so that we could accurately get the name. And since a lot of people have signed up, and if you do come back and you've already signed up, just put a star by your name so that we can find you. And if you signed up and aren't planning on speaking and you don't have a star by your name, then we'll figure it out, I think. So, I first want to welcome you all. My name's Todd Herman. I'm the project planner. I work for Nevada County. Next to me is Patrick Hinmarsh, who's with PMC. He's our consultant. And basically, we're the ones running this meeting tonight. What we're not really going to set up a whole lot of ground rules, but what I ask is at what's normally at the board meetings or planning commission meetings, the public rostrum over there, I'd ask that anybody that wants to come up and address us after the presentation, if you could use those mics. The audio recording from tonight's meeting is happening, and I believe NCTC is also televising, so it's very important that they pick up the sound via the microphones, and so that the cameras can find you if you want to be on TV, that you're sitting at those seats. So those are really the only ground rules. Again, just to not take away from Patrick's presentation here in a moment, this is a scoping meeting where we're just getting fine-tuning from you, if you will. This is an augmentation of the notice of preparation process, which is currently underway. And so we're asking for information tonight as what needs to be in the EIR. And particularly, we're looking for stuff that we don't already know about. By special request, the San Juan Taxpayers Association has asked for the first 30 minutes of the public comment portion of tonight's meeting to give a collective presentation by multiple speakers, and I was told that they're speaking on behalf of the Taxpayers Association. So if they stated a comment that you agree with, we don't necessarily need to rehear it over and over. So I only have the room for 2 hours, so if we can, there's a lot of you here, so if we can try and make it work, that's great. It's great that you're all here and in support of your cause. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and he's going to have to move down there to give his presentation. So.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Hinmarsh with PMC. Welcome to the meeting tonight. I'm going to try to make this very brief so you get an opportunity to speak and rather than hearing me. I don't know if we've got... We'll see if this works. There we go. First of all, we'll go over the purpose of the scoping meeting, and Todd generally got to that. We'll also talk about our project team, the location of the project, some of the details of the project, not very general, and county contacts. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for the public to provide comments on the content of the EIR, and it's to help us determine what needs to be analyzed and to the extent it's analyzed. So any issues that you have, please bring them up. And again, our time is limited, so if you've heard it already, that is something we will be addressing. The project team, we have Todd is the planner. I will be the project manager for the EIR, so I'll be working directly with Todd. And we have sub-consultants on the EIR for traffic, Katie Anderson, Jim Brennan Associates for noise, and Holdridge & Cool for hydrology and geology. I'm sure most of you are aware of the project location, north of Nevada City, about 17 miles north of Nevada City, at around 2,600 to 3,000 feet. And I think you know the rest. We have the project site's approximately 1,400 acres, and here's a picture of the site as it exists today. I'm sure you're all aware that the site was hydraulically mined in the 1800s, which gives it its moonscape appearance that is today. Back in 1993, the mining operation was approved, and it was in operation. It began operation in '94. In September of '95, miners blasted into a fault, and they encountered bedrock that released large volumes of water that had to be pumped from the mine. As the water was pumped from the mine, it was pumped for approximately 4 months. It lowered wells in the area, and when after about 4 months, they were able to seal the fault, and over time, the water came back. But it did impact local wells, and the mine operation was closed in 1997. Some photos of the site shows restoration area, and from the hydraulic mining in the 1800s, most of the topsoil and much of other material was stripped away from the site, so it's difficult for revegetation to occur. But the top site shows a restoration area, and the bottom photos shows a settling pond that has a fair amount of vegetation in it. There are some existing infrastructure on the site. There's the what is that? That's the refinery building, and then the lower portion, the lower picture, is another settling pond. The current proposed operations would be below ground surface like the previous. And they would excavate the material, sort it underground, bring the material that's smaller than a 1/4 inch to the surface, where it would be processed with a gravity operation. The larger than 1/4 inch material would be used to backfill the mine. And the water they would need to dewater the mine, and that would be pumped into settling ponds for infiltration or discharge. It would be, the processing would occur in the refinery building. There would be no chemicals used in the process. It would be all gravity. The process is intended to be 10 years of mining and 4 years of reclamation. And the reclamation will occur simultaneously, annually. They'll move from one site to another, so the entire site won't be impacted at one time. As they move from one location to another, that first location will be reclaimed. So there would only be about 2.8 acres used annually. There would be 10 to 12 settling ponds, and again, 12 acres at any one time due to the continual reclamation. The site will be reclaimed to County and Surface Mining and Reclamation Act standards, and the reclamation will include recontouring and replanting with native or compatible species. The project applicant is seeking a use permit to operate the mine and the reclamation plan. So tonight, as part of the CEQA process, we are right now at the public scoping meeting. That is one of the opportunities for public comment. You can provide your oral comments tonight, your written comments on the notice of preparation, and that ends December 10th. But you'll also notice the next step in the process will be the preparation of the draft EIR. That'll be going on for the next several months. And then there will be another opportunity during the 45-day public review period for anyone to provide written comments again on the draft EIR. And then we will prepare the final EIR, which is responses to those comments and if required, any changes to the draft EIR. And we will prepare that as a final EIR, and you will have another opportunity at the Planning Commission and Board hearings to provide comments. We're assuming that the following areas will be addressed in the EIR: aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, and you'll notice that's surface and subsurface, noise, transportation, utilities, and the mandatory findings will come with it. Right now, we're finalizing the project description, and as you know, the notice of preparation is being circulated right now. The comment period for the notice of preparation ends December 10th, and we will be preparing the draft EIR based on comments and the topics that you've seen there. So for tonight, we're asking that you provide your comments. And again, don't want to cut anybody off, but we do have a large crowd here, so if you've heard it, so have we, and that'll be something that we respond to. And your comments will be part of the record for the EIR, and we will address those in the draft. So that's all for tonight.
Thank you, Patrick. So, Gary, would you like to go first and sort of set the stage?
All right.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Gary Parsons, and I'm the president of the San Juan Ridge Taxpayers Association. I'd like to thank the Planning Department for recognizing the importance of this issue to the community, for recognizing the potential for significant aspects, and for initiating this new EIR process for the San Juan Ridge mine, the mine. I'd also like to thank the community members present here this evening. You. I know this is a bit unusual, but a proposed project like this is felt viscerally, and any opportunity to express this concern will be taken. We know it is early in the process and that tonight's meeting is on the scope of the draft EIR, not on the mine itself. To that end, the Taxpayers Association has submitted extensive comments for your consideration, and members of the Taxpayers Association Steering Committee will speak about various aspects of those comments this evening. As the Planning Department is well aware, the history of the mine operation from 1994 to 1997 is of dewatered wells, contaminated water supplies, and huge quantities of water discharged in a manner that exceeded legal limits. The particular problem for tonight is that none of these results was expected in supporting application or environmental documents, and all of them caused impacts to our community. And these impacts have not been fully assessed or fully mitigated. Some impacts are not just in the past, but are ongoing. These have not been comprehensively assessed nor thoroughly monitored either. Unfortunately, the implementation of Nevada County's mitigation monitoring plan has been insufficient to measure, assess, or even discover many of these ongoing impacts. Public health impacts, for example, have had little or no follow-up. So, in the eyes of the SJRTA, it is a critical aspect to EIR preparation will be to learn enough about the cumulative impacts, from single events in the past to ongoing impacts, to secondary impacts over the subsequent years, in order to understand the potentially significant impacts of this proposed mine reopening. To get there, a detailed and thorough analysis of the previous failure events themselves is necessary to useful interpretation of new and old data, especially considering how much more complicated the project has demonstrated itself to be. Basically, the actual empirical performance data of the mine itself is the best information available. It has a history. Considering all we now know, we request the Planning Department and consultant to gather the following information before a draft EIR can be prepared. Our printed comments deals with these and other areas of concern. Specifically, up-to-date fault and water maps. The map in the mine application is 16 years old and is demonstrably incomplete and irreconcilable with the actual ground. New technology exists and must be used to provide the best possible understanding of where fracture zones, faults, water, and other important features are located and how they relate to the mine. Update of the 1996 Ludorf and Scalmanini study to include a full report on the previous dewatering event of the mine, including input from all residents within the affected watersheds. This means not only data, but interviews with affected well owners who may have anecdotal or documented data about wells and other affected water bodies. The EIR must conduct species surveys for rare, threatened, or endangered species in the appropriate season prior to commencing mining activities. No known surveys were performed before the application was made. Surveys that have happened since may not include the range of species of concern located on and surrounding the proposed mine. Updated information regarding residences, businesses, and other economic features must be included in the EIR. An assessment of public health impacts from the past mining activities should be made by qualified personnel who are independent third parties. This would involve a survey of health issues beyond those who have complained directly to Nevada County. And lastly, the EIR should assess and provide detailed scientific support for the effectiveness of the proposed horizontal drilling and subsequent plugging method to avoid water-bearing faults. This is the only mitigation proposed by the applicant, the only difference between sure well failure and smooth sailing. We were not able to find literature that indicated that this method has been successfully used to avoid water impacts, though it is used to identify where ore is located. But we are not scientists. We are also concerned that horizontal drilling itself might create additional impacts, leading to further degradation of water levels and water quality. The EIR process should apply tremendous rigor in assessing impacts and effectiveness of this proposed mitigation. We look forward to working with the Planning Department and the consultants and subcontractors to make sure that the real impacts of this mine can be discovered this time around. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Lorenz, and by the way, audience, if we clap or groan our way through this whole thing, it's going to take forever. So probably, thank you, but we should probably hold that. I have long-term experience with this mine. I was appointed the community liaison to the water review team for the Siscon project in 1993. This was an oversight body of 3 people mandated by the terms of the conditional use permit. Todd Herman from the county, Bob Pease, geologist from the mine, and myself from the local community. After the mine closed, I was a Nevada County Planning Commissioner for 4 years and more recently a member of the Twin Ridges Elementary School Board, where I was involved in the efforts and costs to make the school water potable again. Lots will be said about the long-term operational dewatering of the proposed mine reopening. But my first point tonight is that the ER must address the initial dewatering as a separate issue. We are talking about a huge quantity of water. The EIR must determine how much. Pumping out the mine will draw down surrounding water, creating a cone of depression. The initial dewatering will remove far more water from the surrounding aquifer than simply what is standing in the mine right now. This volume of water only happened once before, after the mine flooded in 1995, and it blew out Spring Creek. There was no way the quantity of water could be contained on site. No ponds are built yet, and should they be before the initial pump out? Could they handle this rate of flow without discharging to the creeks? Water in the mine must be tested for toxics and baseline quality before dewatering. Monitoring well EMW8, by the way, intersects the mine tunnel, and it should be possible to do this. How will the rate of flow measurement and water quality testing be conducted accurately? How will toxics build up in the settling ponds over time? The old settling ponds should be tested for what they hold in the clays and solids left behind, and the EIR must report these findings. How will we avoid another Spring Creek disaster? Will the settling ponds be built before the initial dewatering? This should be evaluated in the EIR. The handling of any toxics should be evaluated in the EIR. Beyond the initial dewatering techniques, lots of planning is necessary about the mine discharge over the operational life of the mine, potentially decades if you figure in the idle periods as proposed in the application. Obviously, the EIR must address potential dewatering of wells. Obviously, the EIR must address settling ponds and discharge to streams. But how to monitor quantity and quality? Every gallon that leaves the ground should be quantified, as well as any water that flows out to the creeks. Water quality must be constantly monitored. We didn't have this level of oversight last time, and it made the water review team process much more difficult. But there's a larger issue beyond water loss. What is being mucked about in our water? Rubber tire dust, diesel exhaust soot, asbestos brake dust, antifreeze, nitrates from blasting, hydrocarbons from machinery and blasting, ammonium nitrate fuel oil explosives are being used, grease, rust, PCBs from electric transformers, pulverized silicates, natural arsenic, mercuric oxides, oxides of other natural metals, aluminum especially, acids, on and on. This is what the EIR must investigate, list, and design mitigations for where possible. This toxic brew is included in water leaving the mine. And when the mine refloods, all of that stuff is left sitting in our water supply. Last time, none of this was examined or mitigated. We have no idea how much damage was done or is yet to appear in our wells and our bodies. Please hold this image. No one would allow a heavy equipment industrial operation and ammonium nitrate fertilizer explosives in a city water reservoir. And yet that's exactly what's being proposed for our reservoir. The EIR must fully evaluate this issue in complete detail. This is obviously a set of significant impacts, and experience suggests that there may be no way to successfully mitigate them. And as an example of why the EIR needs to go into an accurate history of the project, I noticed in today's Union a write-up suggesting that Grizzly Hill School's water had had long-term problems long before the mine. And without going through any of this long list of figures which come from the Nevada County Environmental Health Department, I want to point out that in September 19th of 1995, a routine testing was done at the school. The secondary level of, meaning it's for palatability rather than toxicity, the secondary level of iron in the well came out when it shouldn't be over 300 micrograms per liter. It came out as 585. So there was a minor iron problem there. September 26th of 1997, almost exactly 2 years later, that figure was 16,000 units. In October 22nd, only a month after that, that figure was 40,200 micrograms per liter. So we are not talking about a minor problem that merely underscores some problem with water quantity and quality on the ridge before We're talking about a disaster that happened at our school. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Saul Henson. I am a hydrologist and steering committee member for the San Juan taxpayers. Perhaps of the most critical importance is how the EIR addresses impacts to the aquifer. Previously, 12 wells were dewatered due to mining operations after approximately 20% of the ore body was removed. 11 of these wells were dewatered after the single catastrophic event when the F6 fault was hit in 1995. Ludorf and Scalmanini projected that by the time the tunneling system is completed, up to 3.5 million gallons a day will be intercepted by the tunnel and discharged from the mine. In comparison, Ludorf and Scalmanini also reported that during the catastrophic dewatering of 1995, the discharge from the mine was no greater than 2 million gallons per day. So if 11 wells were dewatered at 2 million gallons a day over a period of 4 months, then how many wells will be dewatered during the chronic removal of 3.5 million gallons a day over a period of years? The life of the mine could go on for decades based on the guidelines for temporary mine closure in the operations plan. Also compare 3.5 million gallons a day to the total domestic groundwater usage in Nevada County in 2005, reported by the USGS, which was 11.3 million gallons a day. This means that during the later stages of operation, the mine will be intercepting and discharging up to 30% of the daily county domestic groundwater use every single day. A complete water budget using empirical data should be used to analyze whether the aquifer can sustain this level of chronic dewatering as well as the instance of future catastrophic dewatering events and still support residents, streams, wetlands, and wildlife. All data used to create a water budget should include dry, wet, and average years in order to understand the variation in climate and should also account for the likelihood that climate change will impact our future water resources. In all likelihood, a minimum baseline data record of 2 to 4 years should be used to capture the necessary variation in the system. A water budget analysis should be linked to a rigorous and complete analysis of the bedrock fracture system, highly complex, which should be used to delineate water-bearing features. Only complete knowledge of the intricacies of the bedrock system will ensure that future catastrophic dewatering events are avoided. If the mine operator and the county is willing to gamble with our community's water resources, then this analysis should be on par with the highest professional standards and techniques that exist today. A full literature review and study should illuminate the use of horizontal drilling for the specific use of finding water-bearing geologic features. Is this an exploratory technique? Has it been used before? Is our aquifer going to be used to test this hypothesis? And even if this technique proves to be useful, how does that counteract the fact that dynamite and heavy machinery will still be used to dig these tunnels? And then I'd like to say a couple words on surface disturbance of the mine. The surface disturbance for this mine could be equivalent to 60 acres, which will include the construction of over a half dozen 48-acre-foot settling and infiltration ponds. What measures will be taken to reduce the impact of erosion at these sites, and where will the material removed from the ponds be moved to, and how will erosion of that material be prevented? Additionally, a full study should be conducted to determine the location, extent of any and all mercury contamination where surface disturbance will take place at this historic hydraulic mine site. Soil disturbance of contaminated sites enables mercury to be transported into streams and rivers more easily. Additionally, settling ponds are prime mercury methylation sites due to the low oxygen environments they create, especially during warm summer months. Methylmercury is many times more toxic than elemental mercury and can bioaccumulate in the food chain. The EIR should address the potential for mercury contamination of nearby streams due to erosion of disturbed sites, as well as the potential for settling in infiltration ponds to produce methylmercury. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Fradont. I'm the owner of Extasia Jewelry. I'm on the steering committee of the San Juan Ridge Taxpayers Association and a founding member of the Ridge Association of Manufacturers and Business Owners. We have a membership of over 50 business owners, all who are gravely concerned about the impacts to their business from the mining operations. I did not see on your scoping PowerPoint that economic analysis of impacts was going to be part of your study. I really hope that you will consider this. This project should be included in the EIR, not only because of the secondary environment potential impacts on the economy, but also in order to make sure that the project is in line with the county's general plans to retain and develop business. How will the county protect retaining and existing businesses in light of the major risks to our water wells at our business properties? The Ridge actually has a very vibrant and diverse local economy of over 100 small to medium-sized businesses. We employ hundreds of people, and we generate between $15 and $20 million annually in revenue. We view the following as critical areas for study in the draft EIR. Number one, analyze the impact of water loss and/or degradation from mine activities on our properties and businesses. The proposed mine runs parallel to the Ridge Service and Business Corridor along Tylerfoot Road. Within 1/4 mile of the mine are 5 of the largest Ridge employers, including Ananda Expanding Light, with 37 businesses, Grizzly Hill School, Sierra Family Medical Clinic, My Business Extasia, RCD Engineering. We, 5 organizations, employ over 230 locals, and we generate over $12 million in annual revenue. Number 2, analyze the implications to the Sierra Family Medical Clinic on potential well loss. The clinic is the only medical facility within 20 miles, and it serves an elderly and low-income population. The loss of the clinic would be devastating to the health and the social well-being of the Ridge community that depends on it for affordable and primary medical services. Number 3, industrial developments of this size are known to negatively affect surrounding property values. Modeling and regression analysis should be used to quantify those impacts to surrounding property owners within a 3-mile radius of the mine. The Ridge is considered an amenity-driven real estate market. New home buyers are attracted by extensive forest lands, outdoor sports and recreation, a rich cultural life, and a deep sense of community. Our agricultural sector is comprised of numerous fruit and vegetable farms, wineries, cattle ranches, horse ranches, nurseries, which are all dependent on clean and affordable water to thrive. Like everyone else, Ridge owners have seen a 30 to 40% decline in the value of their property since the downturn of 2008. A mine in the heart of our community could further erode our most important financial asset, that of our residential property. We are concerned about the loss of equity to surrounding property owners. How do you mitigate that impact? We are concerned about the impact on an aging rural population trapped in devalued homes and possibly unable to sell their property to finance long-term care. 4, the potential impact to county tax revenue. During the Syscon operation, one local property owner received a Proposition 8 reassessment. His land was reassessed at a 75% value reduction by the county assessor's office because it bordered the Syscon property. His taxes stayed at that low level for almost a decade. What if, I ask you, 1,000 surrounding property owners apply for their Proposition 8 devaluation and receive it. Primary environmental impacts can lead to very profound secondary economic impacts. I implore you to consider these very carefully. And Rambo will be happy to provide you with any economic information that you need if we have it.
My name is Erin Noel, and I am an attorney who's been helping the San Juan Ridge Taxpayers Association a little bit with preparation of comments. I also live near the mine and grew up here, and I've lived here most of my life. So I think I'm the last speaker with the Taxpayers Association Steering Committee group. So I want to say, first of all, I want to give notice, or not give notice, sorry about that. I want to make clear that we're off to such a better start than I think the last time this project came around. Many of the issues that this group has addressed are issues that were identified as potentially significant impacts by the planning department and the consultant early in the process, which means that there's a chance that we'll identify really the extent of impacts that are potential. So we really appreciate that. That means a lot. I want to address a couple of issues that were identified or appeared to be identified in the notice of preparation as maybe not significant, and to indicate that I think that they should be included in the scope of the EIR as significant. Specifically, impacts to public services and utilities. It was a little unclear, but essentially because the mine is in close proximity to the well for our only medical clinic, it's also in close proximity to the well for our Cal Fire Station, our CDF station, that is responds very quickly to fires, as well as near the well for our fire station. So I just want to make clear that we do actually have significant potential effects to public services that I hope are recognized and in the EIR and assessed. Secondly, impacts to recreation. This site is surrounded by public lands, and actually the mine site itself, before the mine was before the last period of operation, has been used as a site of recreation. A lot of people hike in that area, so there's potentially significant effects both on the experience of recreationists, but also safety risks. There's not, it's a very large property, the mine property. People can easily wander on from BLM land or other lands. And in addition, there may be significant effects, we believe, to agriculture and forestry resources. Specifically, the San Juan Ridge has been kind of the host for the community-supported agriculture movement. There are several farms, one of which supplies food to over 500 people, and other historic ranches whose wells could be affected by this proposed mine. So there could be significant effects to not only historic ranches and farm properties, but currently active farm properties. So those are some of the issues that we think should be investigated that maybe have not been identified as potentially significant. In addition, I just want to state that I think it's going to be very tricky to establish a baseline here, because there have already been extensive effects. So it's very difficult to parse out what that you see right now is because of the mine or the baseline to be affected by the mine. And I'm really hoping that you can listen to the community and understand a little bit more about that, because it's not all reflected in data so far. And then I also just want to identify, just to speak this, you've identified effects to biological resources. There are potential effects to species that are listed both with the State Endangered Species Act as well as federally listed species that could be affected by the proposed project, as well as extremely rare plant species. There's one plant species that one occurrence probably occurs. It probably occurs in the project area. That is one of only 3 occurrences in the state. So there's significant biological resources that could be affected. And finally, what I'd like to ask of the consultant is to in terms of being aware of the history and listening to this group of people, we formed an opinion in the last process that this mine would be okay. And the group that you're seeing here, the San Juan Ridge Taxpayers Association, really worked on trying to come up with a plan that would allow the mine to go forward without any effects, and believed that it was successful. And in fact, that was incorrect. And I think that the county also, I think Mr. Herman has been extremely inviting of our comments and an excellent public employee in that way. But we've formed an opinion together that everything's okay. And so the data that we have available so far has been interpreted in that way. And what I've heard in the process of getting involved with coming up with comments from these people is that there are many individual people whose lives are not okay since the mine happened. And that is information. It's not just people on a bandwagon. These are highly diverse people. It's not just a bunch of environmentalists. It's a mother of one of the top timber fellers with Sierra Pacific Industries. It's people who have worked in mining before. People here have, the reason they're saying the things they're saying is because they have information to give you. So I'm asking that you listen not just with an eye toward, oh yeah, that concern's been mentioned, check that off. But there's actual empirical data available here in this room if you listen closely. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Kerrigan. I am a private tax-paying citizen. My well was one of the wells impacted by the former Siscon mine, a private business sanctioned by Nevada County. I write concerning the proposed reopening of the San Juan mine. My primary concern is the potential to water impacts, water quality, potential effects on public health. I've been a registered nurse for 37 years, so my concern is my family and the health of others. I've had the unfortunate experience of a prolonged toxic environmental exposure. I was diagnosed with aluminum toxicity December 1997 and copper toxicity March of 1999 following the dewatering of wells in my neighborhood. I had 3 different medical doctors state that my health problems are a direct link to ingesting and bathing in contaminated water. Those 2 water events changed my life forever because they led to a cascade of health problems that have been ongoing to this day. I want to tell my story in part so that those preparing the EIR can understand what it means to have ongoing health effects from contaminated water. The dewatering and the contamination that occurred was not just a minor, trivial, or temporary impact. I was harmed. The impact has continued for the last 15 years and most likely will be lifelong. Some wells remain contaminated to this day. All wells were not mitigated as per the use permit. On Labor Day weekend, 1995, I was the nursing supervisor on duty at Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital. The emergency department received a call stating there was an explosion at Siscon Mine in North Columbia, and they were bringing the injured in via ambulances. That incident literally blew a hole into an aquifer, and the F5, F6 faults were breached. Within days, my neighbors' good wells went dry. Unbeknownst to me and my neighbors, the F6 fault ran right up Green Ravine Road and right through my private property, 2 miles from Siscon's mining operation. My well never went dry. I traced my aluminum toxicity to my well water. Since my only potable well water was contaminated, Siscon started purchasing me bottled water for my home. My neighbor, Mrs. Ricky Colby, had elevated levels of aluminum in her blood, as well as my 2 roommates. All were ill. Throughout the years, I had multiple contacts with Nevada County Environmental Health and Public Health, always requesting comprehensive water testing based on evidence of private well water contamination and elevated levels of aluminum in 4 individuals. These requests were always denied. On October 1st, 1999, I had a conversation with Mr. Gene Reed, California State Water Coordinator. He quoted, "The consensus between the state of California and Nevada County was that Siscon screwed up the water," unquoted. During that period, Nevada County Environmental Health and Public Health chose not to pursue further analysis of potential impacts to public health caused by the mine. It is the job of our county and state agencies to ensure that past water contamination and resulting health impacts are identified, mitigated, and that future impacts are avoided through careful analysis in an EIR, and by adhering to requirements of state and federal law as to water quality. I hereby request that Nevada County provide full and complete analysis of past and potential future impacts to water quality and quantity. Specifically, I ask that the EIR evaluate the F5, F6 faults and the strength of the current plug, a contingency plan for potential future impacts to wells, industrial accidents, replacement wells, devaluation of property values, noise pollution, wastewater discharge, disposal of mining waste containing hazardous concentrations of metals, and impacts to public health from past and future mining activities. Thank you.
My name is Ricky Colby. My husband, Alan, and I have lived on the San Juan Ridge since the early 70s. I have worked on the forest fires as a cook for firefighters, worked in the stores on the ridge, worked in the restaurants in Nevada City and Grass Valley. My husband worked in construction for a local contractor. We raised our two beautiful daughters here, bought property, and built a home, and had hoped to live out our old age here. Now, once again, we feel threatened. It is very hard for me to even talk up here today because of the delayed stress that I feel. I did not realize this was there until the announcement that they planned on reopening this mine. I must stress that we had a perfectly good artesian well on our property prior to Labor Day 1995. We had no problems whatsoever related with the quantity or the quality of our water in our well. That changed when Siscon Gold Corp's mine workers intercepted the F-16 fault. Labor Day weekend, we heard what sounded like an explosion. It rocked our old trailer like an earthquake. A short time after this, Siscon deepened Grizzly Hill School's well. The day they started testing that well, they pumped it dry to see how fast it recovered. We started having trouble. Our water became cloudy and a lot of sediment. September 14th, we got orange sediment from our well. We let it run until we got cloudy water with sand in it. We were in the middle of construction, moving our old trailer out so that we were not running water at that time until my daughter's horse needed water. That was September 16th. We drew bad, murky water, then rusty, thick water, and we let it rest overnight. On September 17 a.m., water was not drinkable. By afternoon, ran it again, and we had water for a minute, and then there wasn't any more. My husband went to the wellhead, and he could hear air whistling, so he lit a lighter and held it to the small hole in the wellhead. It sucked the flame downward. Our contractor came that morning to prepare things for our new modular home. He told us if we did not have water in our well, we would not have a loan. And he said to call him when we had water. And he left. I have to tell you, we were crushed. 10 years of working to achieve a real home. And this happens. My children were sent to live with friends so they could shower and attend school. My husband and I lived in a tent until the contractor came back 4 weeks later. Many nights, a lion sat outside of our tent. And that was a little scary. Our contractor went to another job when we lost the water, and it took him that long to come back. These are a few of the things that the report must address. There must be something that helps people in that kind of a situation. The environmental impact report needs to address mitigating the physical costs, health, and mental stress. The cost is it has been to be Siscon's victim. I got aluminum toxicity from drinking the well water from our well because I was asked to drink the water to make sure it was drinkable, causing me to go through weeks of chelation treatment. This has cost me much physically and mentally for many years. I have 2 filtration systems needed to remove the aluminum and the other minerals. The system is as old as when the mine went out of business. It costs me money all the time, money I cannot afford to spend, but I must to have drinking water. I have been replacing these systems piece by piece all these years. My well is much deeper than before. I pay higher electricity bills. Mitigate things like this for long periods of time if they happen. Mitigate all those before a permit is issued. Mitigate myself, my husband, Grizzly Hill School, Kathy Kerrigan. I'm sure there's others. The last bond was so inadequate. If there is so much gold down under our ridge, then cover all the costs to extract it, even if that means paying us full market value for our homes, the value before it was known that the San Juan Ridge mine wanted to reopen an old wound. I had a real estate person tell me what I could sell my place for in the spring. I would like to know what it's worth now that this is public. A much larger bond must be part of this one, even to cover monetary costs per incident, not one that allows them to take out bankruptcy and walk away. It should also have a stop-gate clause, making them stop operation when something happens right away. If they had to stop after the first well went dry to find out what the cause was, the rest of us may never have lost our wells. We will never know that now, but we could in the future. Dewatering a place many people live is wrong in so many ways. The quality and quantity of our water determines whether we can exist here. The San Juan Ridge mine is not going to care. It's only going to care what it costs them in the end. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Berardi. I'm the principal superintendent of Twin Ridges Elementary School District. I'm here tonight representing my school board, and I have a letter here I'd like to read on their behalf. On November 13, 2012, the Twin Ridges Elementary School District Board of Trustees voted to oppose the proposed reopening of the San Juan Ridge mine, formerly owned by Siscon Gold Corporation. We have voted to oppose the mine because, based on our extensive experience, the mine has had and will continue to have significant impacts that cannot be mitigated. Specifically, the mine caused dewatering of our wells and contamination of our water. This has wasted our district's time and money and threatened the health and well-being of our students. Further, continued mining risk of our water supply once again also poses significant threats to our students' air quality, as hazardous materials will be transported less than a quarter of a mile from our school at the intersection where most students pass on their way to and from school every day. The risk to our children is just not worth whatever benefits the mine may provide. We understand that the mine must undergo an ERI analysis, and that presently comments are being accepted for scoping issues associated with the mine. We would like to provide additional information about why we believe that the mine will cause significant impacts that cannot be mitigated, and we ask that the Planning Department recognize the EIR and the very real possibility that these impacts to water quality will not be able to be mitigated. A brief history of our water troubles will make this clear. Right after the mine opened in 1994, the district encountered serious problems with quantity and quality of water produced from our well. The district informed Nevada County of these problems immediately. In September of 1995, the mine hit a fracture that drained our Grizzly Hill School well. The replacement well provided by Siscon has produced inferior water at a high price ever since. Further, for 11 years, the water from the replacement well was too poor of quality for the children to drink legally, and students had to drink bottled water. For a school, this is not a real solution. In the past 4 years, our water can finally meet state standards, but only if treated. Currently, necessary treatment of our water to meet the Health Department drinking water standards costs the Twin Ridges Elementary School District approximately $8,000 a year. The mine has cost our small school district enormously since it opened. The school paid for bottled drinking water after Siscon bond funds stopped paying for it. The school has funded many required alterations to our water treatment plant. We also lost students due to parents' concerns over the drinking water. It is safe to say that the Twin Ridges Elementary School District lost at least $150,000 because of this mine. But the loss of money is nowhere near as significant as the failure to care for our children's well-being by allowing the water to become polluted, and the trust that was lost in our school. Our children and staff were sickened, hassled, and distracted from doing their best job. The community began to react negatively to our school, and our mission in this community was compromised. The Siscon mine was a disaster for the Twin Ridges Elementary School District, for Grizzly Hill School, and for the students and families within our community. For the school district, it is unimaginable to think that this could be allowed to happen yet again. It is the experience of the Twin Ridges Elementary School District that the mine dewatering damaged our school and our greater community, and we see no evidence that the effects of this mine dewatering can be mitigated in any meaningful way. Further, little examination of impacts to air quality on our students was performed in the last round. Finally, the issues of transportation of hazardous substances near our school is a serious compromise to the safety of our children. We respectfully ask that the Planning Department include in the Environmental Impact Report an examination of the history and disclose that the mine dewatering on the scale that cannot be successfully mitigated in any safe and practical sense. We further request that the Planning Commission do their job to protect our children and the community with a no project determination for the proposed San Juan Ridge mine. This letter was signed by all 5 board members of the Twin Ridges Elementary School District, and they would like it in for the record. Thank you.
If I may interject, how many people have brought letters that you were intending to just read into the record? Because just judging by the number of heads here, and I have another hour, if you'd like, we can just submit those to us, and they will be into the record. So, not to diminish anything, fine. But just for the aid of getting through the evening at a reasonable hour, or at least through the morning at a reasonable hour, I'd like to encourage you to just submit anything in writing will be forwarded along with the NOP comment. So, with that, go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. I'd prefer to read my letter, and I'll give that to you. I'm Bill Cornelius, Sutter County Superintendent of Schools, and we are in receipt of the notice of preparation, the NOP, of an environmental impact report for the San Juan Ridge Mine project dated November 9th, 2012. Pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, please accept this letter as our formal comment of concern for the subject project. As noted in the NOP, the comment period closes on December 10th, 2012. The Sutter County Superintendent of Schools operates Shady Creek Outdoor School located in Nevada County at the end of Pathfinder Way, approximately 5 miles southwest of the San Juan Ridge Mine project along Tyler Foot Road. Shady Creek Outdoor School provides an in-residence outdoor education program to approximately 170 to 200 students per week, or 5,000 students annually between months of September and December and February and May. Sutter County Superintendent of Schools has been providing outdoor education for over 50 years. Up until the fall of 2008, we leased Woodleaf facility over in Challenge, California. In the fall of 2007, Sutter County Superintendent of Schools purchased the Shady Creek facility as a permanent home for its outdoor education, now known as Shady Creek Outdoor School in Nevada County, and we began serving students in the fall of 2008. The number of students we have served since the purchase of this facility, for 5th and 6th grade students, we've served 19,057 students. In the fourth grade day program, we've served 2,894. For the high school students and cabin counselors, 2,215. So for a total of 24,166 students have been served at Shady Creek. And we serve approximately 90 schools, 49 districts, and that represents 8 counties. As a public school entity, Our primary concern is the well-being of the students involved in our program, and a request that the following items be studied specifically as the impacts relate to our school. We insist that the school not be negatively impacted because of the project. Drinking water, number 1. We are concerned of the potential impacts of the San Juan Ridge Mine project that it might have on the school's drinking water. The school sits at an elevation of approximately 800 feet lower than the project. Many discussions have taken place regarding the mine's previous impact on the area's drinking water supply, more specifically drinking water contamination at Grizzly Hill School, and many neighboring wells have gone dry. We request that the drinking water study be prepared analyzing local geological formations, aquifer travel direction, and capacity, and the impact of the project may have on the school's ability to provide drinking water to its students. Since the school is at a much lower elevation than the mine, we are concerned that the aquifer providing water to the school may be contaminated by the project's proposed mining operation. A health risk assessment should also be prepared to analyze the impacts. Storm water runoff, number 2. We are concerned of the potential impacts that the San Juan Ridge Mine project may have on the school by potentially contaminating stormwater runoff that eventually reaches the school, and how this potentially contaminated stormwater may reach drinking water aquifers through known fractured rock geological formations. We request that a detailed area-wide hydrology report be prepared, analyzing storm, water quantity, and direction of flow. In addition, we request that a separate report be prepared analyzing potential stormwater contamination through mining operations. Number 3, traffic. We are concerned of the potential impacts of the San Juan Ridge Mine project may have on traffic on Tyler Foot Road near our school. We request that a traffic report be prepared analyzing the amount and type of new traffic that will be present near the school due to the project. We insist that our students are not subjected to potential harm due to increased traffic from the proposed project. Number 4, noise. We are concerned of the potential impacts of the San Juan Ridge Mine project may have on noise near our school. Our school is dedicated to providing a high level of outdoor education to our students, and we are concerned that the project may produce increased noise, causing a disturbance to the way in which we teach our students. We request that a detailed noise study be prepared analyzing the project's increased noise due to mining operations and increased traffic near the school. Number 5, air quality. We are concerned of the potential impacts that the San Juan Ridge Mine project may have on the air quality near our school. Since our core offer to our students is an outdoor education, we insist that the air our students breathe is not impacted by the project. We request that a detailed air quality study be prepared indicating the potential impact on air quality near our school due to the project mining operations and increased traffic. I would like to thank you for your time regarding this matter, as we are very concerned how the project may impact our school and our students. The health and welfare of our students is my utmost concern. Tonight, we hear stories that we don't usually hear about. Let's be extremely careful not to create new ones. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Diana Pasquini, and I represent the San Juan Ridge Family Resource Center. We're a public services agency. We provide social services to the San Juan Ridge community. Since 2006, the San Juan Ridge Family Resource Center has worked to connect, support, and celebrate families on the San Juan Ridge. As a member of the Partners Network of Family Resource Centers, we work closely with San Juan's Early Head Start, Grizzly Hill School, Ananda's Living Wisdom School, Sierra Family Medical Clinic, North San Juan Senior Center, and the San Juan Ridge community to assure that this community's children and their families have the resources necessary to lead healthy, productive lives. We appreciate the opportunity to voice the following concerns regarding possible impacts from the proposed mine upon San Juan Ridge families and the community at large. If families' water source diminish, will they be able to continue to live healthy, independently functional lives on their homesteads? Will they be able to continue to grow their own food? If they sell food crops, will they forfeit an organic certification if less than pure or treated water is used? If family gardens or food from local growers are a part of San Juan Ridge diets, how will families' budgets be affected if they no longer can grow their own food? Additional transportation should be factored into assessing the physical impacts of the loss of food crops, as families would have to travel distances to maintain even the simplest of diets. If water sources are diminished, there is also a chance that families will have to forego the ability to do laundry in their own homes. Because no public laundry facility now exists on the San Juan Ridge, families would have to make the trip to the Nevada City Grass Valley area. At this time, there is no public transportation to and from the ridge. Having to travel distances for the necessities of life, such as food, clean clothing, even drinking water, would pose a hardship upon people who are already struggling to make ends meet. How can these impacts be mitigated? History has proven that impacts from the last mine had a negative impact on Grizzly Hill School. For years, the staff and students drank bottled water. Now the school has a filtration system, and drinking water is treated to assure its potability. Despite the application of costly measures, Grizzly Hill's tainted water supply and reputation have not returned to their pre-mine status. How can potential impacts on the quality of Grizzly Hill's water supply and reputation be mitigated? As a small community in the wildland intermix, each of us is a first responder when emergencies occur. If a fire starts, we call 911, then we grab the hose. A dependable water supply and a good length of hose is often the difference between losing one's home or keeping a fire from spreading to adjacent homes or forests. Precious moments before emergency responders make it up winding gravel roads to incident sites can lessen the damage if there is adequate water on site. How can families continue to have a dependable source of water for emergency use? In addition to other services, the San Juan Ridge Family Resource Center provides access to a small food pantry, a clothing closet, and one washer and dryer that are available for public use. We also allow people to fill up containers of fresh drinking water when needed. How will the impacts of the mine impact use of our facility? Although we are dedicated to serving our community, our staff, our facility, and our budget are not large enough to assume a more sizable caseload. As we ask these questions, we can imagine mitigations, but who will pay for them? San Juan Ridge's families, farmers, retirees, and just plain folks should not have to bear the brunt of assuming the financial burden of mitigating the impacts of heavy industry on their homes and their community. We appreciate being part of the planning process and welcome any questions or requests for clarification regarding our concerns, services, or facility. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Herman. My name is Caleb Dardick, and I'm the Executive Director of the South Yuba River Citizens League. Our mission at Circle is to unite the community to protect and restore the Yuba watershed, and we have over 3,500 members and volunteers, many of whom are in the room with us tonight. I would like to thank you for your responsiveness to the community and to our request for a full EIR for the reopening of the proposed reopening of the San Juan Ridge mine. I also want to take this opportunity to thank this and acknowledge the leadership of the San Juan Ridge Taxpayers Association. You guys have done an amazing job. You've really identified the issues, and your work tonight and in this process, I'm sure, will lead to a great outcome. Circle looks forward to working with the county to ensure that this EIR addresses critical issues that pose risk of significant impact to our community and natural environment, including assessing the cumulative impacts on aquatic habitat, water quality, and fisheries. Circle is very concerned about the potential significant impacts of the project on water quality and quantity in Spring and Shady Creeks, as well as indirect impacts on the South Yuba River. Our concerns include impacts to wildlife and vegetation associated with these affected water bodies, as well as impacts on water quality and sensitive species in the South Yuba River and its tributaries. Specifically, we submit the following scoping comments. Dewatering threatens headwaters of local streams and wetlands critical to water quality and quantity. Cumulative impacts must be assessed for the maximum project horizon and all potential scenarios of dewatering and discharge from mine activities. Cumulative impacts to fisheries and amphibian populations should be thoroughly assessed in the EIR and include downstream effects to species expected to be present within the expected duration of the project. The potential release of mercury into streams and ultimately the South Yuba River must be evaluated in this EIR. Impacts to recreational uses should be assessed as potentially significant impact in this EIR. Finally, the proposed mine reopening must be evaluated in the overall context of environmental damage and risk. We remain gravely concerned that this project would draw and discharge a huge amount of water that could severely damage our watershed as well as threaten the quality and reliability of our water supply. Thank you very much. And I have comments to submit.
Hello, my name is Tom Weisstar, and I'm the Executive Director of Synergia Learning Ventures, which is a nonprofit outdoor education program located up in North Columbia. My personal property is just a mile from the mine site, and in fact, it's only one parcel removed. Sorry, this is not a written letter, so bear with me here. Back in that time, as you may remember, Todd, I was the program director for what is now Shady Creek Outdoor School from 92 to 2002. But my personal property right there was affected by the mine. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But my personal property was affected by the mine, and I was not on the official records of that. I declined the monitoring that was provided because it felt a little to me like the, asking the fox to watch the hen house. So I did my own monitoring. I have a very high producing well, so it wasn't dewatered, but my pump wasn't big enough to know if I got below what the pump was capable of. But my comment is about the quality of the water. During that time, our water got progressively worse. And after about $5,000 of modifications to the well and filtration systems, I finally decided to drill a new well, and at a cost of $12,000. And on 10 acres of land, there's not too far you can go, to find a new placement for a well. But hopefully that will suffice and getting decent quality water now. But at the time, I was not able to pass potable water quality at that time. So it's, as you've been hearing, there's a lot of stories and issues about the water, and we are all very concerned about that. During my time as the program director at what is now Shady Creek Outdoor School, we were able to change our programming. We didn't have the number of students that they have right now, and we were able to change our programming to keep kids out of the creek. What wasn't said, and I'm not speaking for Shady Creek Outdoor School, just I'm very intimate with that property, as you may remember. I was the one that was there with the dowser on that property trying to find the wells, the well water. And at the time, everybody thought, oh, this project's never going to work because you're not going to find any water there. All the neighbors had 2 gallons a minute, 1 gallon a minute. But working with this dowser, we found two wells on that site that were both 20 gallons a minute. And the well drillers that came out there just shook their heads and said, do not drill there. You're not going to find water. But we had I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Rose from Auburn, but back then she was an 85-year-old woman, dowser, who came out and crawled through the Manzanita and found spots. And she said, well, I think there's pretty good water here. I think there's an intersection right here. And I think it's about 150 feet deep, and I think it's about 20 gallons a minute. Please tell me afterwards what actually happens. I don't charge for this. It's a gift from God. But make sure you tell the well drillers to drill right there. Not here, not there, but right there. And sure enough, 2 wells, 150 feet deep, 20 gallons a minute. So the water at that place, I think, is probably pretty precarious, and they're right in being concerned about that. But my point about that, and what wasn't said, is that Shady Creek runs through that property, and it's a beautiful little stretch of creek. And when we were there, and I saw these non-natural elevated flows, and I knew where they were coming from, and I knew that there was discharge from the mine. I made sure that the kids didn't go in the water at that time. But now, and my question is, and wasn't raised, and what I'd like to see addressed in the EIR is, what will be the notification measures for discharge? And what will be the mitigation measures if they have to change their programming to keep kids out of the creek? That's the major feature on that property, and it's a magnet for the kids, especially when there's increased flows, because now there's enough water to actually get in there and swim around a little bit. So if they have to change operations, it's going to be a big hit to their potential revenue, and that place is costly to operate, and without their revenues coming in on a regular basis, it would be difficult. And again, I'm not speaking for them whatsoever, just because of my intimate knowledge of that property. So those are my concerns, and I would like to see those things addressed in the EIR, not only the potential health effects of that, but monetary effects that may be created by having to redo programming. Our organization is also outdoor education program. We do a lot of our programs off-site, but we also, it's a small business in the community there, and since our beginning in 2002, we've served over 5,000 students and brought in about $1.5 million of revenue into the community. So I'm in support of all the questions and concerns that the San Juan Ridge Taxpayers Association have brought up, and thank you for your longtime service as a public employee, and I hope we can really come to something that's a more sustainable idea of what our water needs are, because they're going to go, as you all know, it goes way beyond our local community here. 70% of the water for California comes from the Sierra. And if we continue to degrade our water, what does it mean locally and for the whole state? Thank you very much.
Good evening. Mr. Herman, thank you for being so patient. And and thank you to the taxpayers and others who have allowed me to condense my remarks considerably. So let's see, I'll just try to pick up where I left off. I would like to reiterate something that Gary said, which had to do with, he touched on the fact that some of the impacts were felt by people that were not in the 3-mile monitoring area and were in fact probably never reported. So I'm going to request that the EIR consider the surveying and interviewing and monitoring of people way beyond the perimeter that was established, and include anybody who will tell you that they saw some kind of a difference. So we need to establish a baseline monitoring system immediately. Tomorrow is too late. And the monitoring must occur 24/7 at a minimum of 15-minute intervals, starting now and not terminating until some years after the restoration. That's really necessary in order to get an accurate profile of the characteristics at each site. the cost of this has been covered already, and the cost, it really, yeah, well, I want to get on to the costs. I don't know how you're going to mitigate that. I don't know what kind of bonding would be required for that, but the bonding needs to be substantial and to cover not just the costs of somebody lost their water, but somebody needs to move, and they really should be afforded the costs of moving, of reestablishing themselves anywhere in the world that they had to go because they couldn't be here any longer and sustain themselves. That's pretty far-fetched, but not really. And the proponent needs to secure some kind of a credit rating from an independent and credible rating agency. I don't know if that's been done or not. And just quickly, the loss of habitat needs to also consider the loss of habitat to those species that may no longer be there. The tortoises that were there, I think, are extinct, not as a tortoise species perhaps, but in our area. They could not cross the boundaries where the fences were. They couldn't get across the road, the Jackass Flat Road. My property, by the way, is on Cotahuasca Way, which is further down. I am within the monitoring area. So any water mitigation also needs to include, if you need to bring people water, don't ever come to my house with tap water in a plastic bottle. It's not going to fly with me. An artesian well is water, and 97% of the bottled water in the world is tap water in plastic, put out by 3 major corporations. So that's, if you see me drinking water out of a gin bottle, if I'm drinking it fast, it's not gin. My water comes in glass and is transported to I don't drink water out of taps. So, and there's probably, I just thought of this when Caleb got up and talked about impacts to the river. My property goes down to the river and up the other side, and so I'm going to have to include that in my remarks when I get around to commenting on the final, or the draft EIR. Thank you for your time.
My name's Jerry Bloom. I'm a Nevada City resident. I have ties to the Ridge just with friends and activities, but I came, I came to observe what was happening here, and looking at and in the watching the presentation at the beginning of the evening. One of the slides struck me that I felt like maybe I should comment on, and that was this. It was just a couple slides back, but it said something about that the company would meet the minimum reclamation requirements of the county and some some other agency. And while I don't have any experience with hard rock mining, I do have experience observing timber mining and projects on the national forest, and often in the environmental documents we see this minimum standards. We meet these minimum requirements, and what happens in time after time is that is what is met. They meet their minimum requirements. They never go over. They never do something extra. And I just think, and we continually degrade. However much we try to, they try to do something, there's a continual degradation because they're taking, the forest, they're taking the land in this case, and doing something with it and manipulating it, and they never quite get it back to the way it was. And so the minimum standards don't really fly. I just think that it would be nice to see in an environmental document that we will exceed the minimum standards. We will try to do something more than the minimum standards. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Grundy. I live in Nevada City, downtown, so I'm not in the area. To the point, I'd like to urge you to require an economic study as part of the EIR with two key criteria. And these are important. The point: one, look at underperformance scenarios. Two, account for many externalities and contingencies as possible, including any resulting legal battles, impacts to other businesses and residences that have been described here in the paperwork. According to CEQA guidelines, CCR Title 14, Section 15131, in quotes, economic or social information may be included in an EIR or may be presented in whatever form the agency desires, close quote. That's pretty vague. The rest of that section and other parts of the CEQA guidelines indicate that any demonstrable link between the project economics and the effect on the physical environment may be used to show significant environmental impact in the EIR. Here's just one possible connection. If the project economics turn out worse than expected for any reason, changes in the market, inherent uncertainty of the project, repeated dewatering or other contingency costs, then the mine company may decide to close the operation at any time. A bankrupt company or an abandoned job site for any reason, combined with insufficient SMARA bond money, would leave the taxpayers to foot the cleanup costs. As a result, the cleanup may be late, may be incomplete, or may simply never happen. Failure of an economic study to account for both points, underperformance scenarios and externalities, will likely leave the county and the taxpayers completely unaware of these possible dangers. As an example, the most complete economic study for the proposed Idaho, Maryland project in Grass Valley relied solely on assumptions from the mine company CEO, concealing entirely plausible underperformance scenarios in which Grass Valley would be left to subsidize the mine company in perpetuity, staying in the red for the entire project lifetime. In closing, I'd like to make the point that an economic study that fails to take a serious look at underperformance scenarios is more damaging than not having an economic study at all. It is up to you as the lead agency to require a thorough economic study as part of the EIR. Thank you.
My name is Jonathan Keene, and I'm property owner. I own property adjacent to the mine. I'm a general contractor. I've lived in Nevada County since 1970. I currently live in Grass Valley. The one thing that I looked at carefully, thank you, Gary, was I just tried to read through the reclamation plan that was proposed by the applicant, and I just wanted to point out that the previous mining operation, the reclamation, was never completed. At least it even shows on some of the maps that are in the reclamation plan, it shows at least two settling ponds that were left unreclaimed for stormwater detention. That doesn't really make sense. There's no reason to retain stormwater on the two locations that are identified that way. One of those unreclaimed ponds is right along Jackass Flats Road. To this day, it remains an eyesore. It's a magnet to trespassing off-road vehicles, and it also indicates a loss of 15 years of habitat regeneration that hasn't happened on that pond. So I would just wanted to suggest that the planning department, before entertaining a new project like this, you should to ensure that the current property owner or that the previous reclamation plan be completed, whether or not this project moves forward. And if it's found that the reclamation plan was not completed, that pertinent fines and penalties should be assessed and collected, and reclamation should be completed before any further review of a new mining and reclamation plan. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Ralph Silberstein, and I'm the president of Citizens Looking at the Impacts of Mining. We are concerned with and monitor mining projects in the community. Given past events on this project, it really doesn't seem fair that the residents of San Juan Ridge have to deal with this mine again. With that said, it certainly seems appropriate to spare no effort to protect the community. The last time the project halted early, and as Jonathan just stated, reclamation was not completed apparently. One thing that I would urge to be included in the studies are scenarios for the project halting at all different phases. These projects never really run full term, or if they do, they change their overall planning. They maybe extend it, or they shorten it, or they go bankrupt, or they drain a bunch of wells and create a disaster. So I think it's important to imagine different scenarios, like after 1 year, or during moving of operations from one processing point to another, or, you know, having constructed or partially constructed a retaining facility but not finished it. All these scenarios need to be examined as what would happen if they stop now at this point after 3.5 years and being broken, not kept up with whatever they're supposed to keep up with, and now we got to make it right. Not just this perfect world of after 10 years, you know, now we're going to follow this so-called reclamation plan. A couple of points I noticed also on the plans to date. I would say that it's really important to look at long-term impacts to the water, the groundwater system. I'm concerned, or I would be concerned about leaching of the holding ponds into the groundwater or into the former evacuation areas of the mine below. Some of the holding ponds are actually over where mining areas are to be undertaken. And the backfill of the mine underneath is supposed to completely fill the chambers, but it's hard to imagine there wouldn't be some void at the top. And there's talk of using cement backfill. So there's the whole question of what happens when you have cemented backfill or slurry mixes and you're backfilling in there and you have long-term leaching. I'm not talking about 1 year or 2 years, 5 years, 100 years from now or 200 years from now. I mean, these are problems that we have to prevent for the future generations. So what is the chemistry that takes place there? The Office of Mining and Reclamation does not look at the reclamation of underground facilities. So who does? Who inspects that? I think that's an important question. And that's really all I have to say. One other little thing is, when producing the documents, it would be much appreciated and helpful to everybody in the community if they're text searchable. Thank you.
My name is Al Bolf. I'm ex-nuclear Navy and ex-nuclear industry, worked at nuclear power plant. I worked in water treatment aboard ship and also at the power plant and did environmental surveillance in Rancho Seco. I also had some experience of mercury removal systems at a geothermal facility. You know, the technology exists for retrieval of all these materials and the world economic incentive, and I follow what goes on worldwide. Where other people follow sports and that's very superficial to me. But what's going on worldwide now is a thirst for minerals. And I see with with these ponds and that, I see retrieval of a lot of this material. I was in Japan one time and they were retrieving uranium from seawater, and because they have no indigenous uranium deposits. And as for mercury, there's a lot of coal plants in this world that contribute to atmospheric mercury that deposits on our land. And I think it's really hypocrisy when you have a lot of people using cell phones, iPods, and computers that have all these materials in, and the thirst we've built up for the rest of the world, and there's 7 billion people in this world, and last year there were 5 billion cell phones produced in this world, and they expect by 2040 10 billion people. And all of them have the thirst for all the little goodies we enjoy today. And I think it's very, unless you cut back locally and become purist, You know, I'm a proponent of public transportation, but there's a lot of people that prefer to drive, and some of the vehicles we have, like the Land Rover, have 25 computers under the hood, and there's a lot of the rare earths involved in those computers operating efficiently. Our SMUD windmills, I was an ex-SMUD employee, our SMUD windmills down in the Delta have 700 pounds of rare earths in every windmill. If you have a Prius, you have 25 pounds of rare earths in every Prius to make it work electronically more efficient, plus 50 pounds of lithium batteries. I mean, let's get real, folks. You know, the demand for this material, I think that there'll be no throwing away anything in the near future. And there's enough incentive going on now in the rest of the world that locally that you'll probably be able to put out bids for the waste in those waste ponds, and they'll have to be utilized. And people, let's not be naive about the rest of the consumption going on in the world that we fostered in this country. We have taught the rest of the world to consume, and let's not forget it. Thank you.
My name is Peter Garing. I'm the village manager at Ananda Village on the San Juan Ridge. I'm speaking for the community at their request. Ananda Village is a cooperative spiritual community that's been in existence for 45 years on the ridge. We have 770 acres of land on 2 sites, both of which are within close proximity to the mine. We have about 230 residents at the village currently. We operate many businesses out of the village, both community-owned and member-owned, and represent about $5.4 million in gross business that's located there. We also bring hundreds of guests to our retreat facilities that come from out of town to bring in economic dollars from outside the community, come to our community for the peace and tranquility and the beauty of the ridge. All of this is dependent on the groundwater supply that is in the ridge that is being threatened by this mine. I really want to thank the county for taking the time to do a thorough EIR again, and to thank those people in this room who put in hundreds of hours investigating this and helping in the process. I'll try not to repeat the things that have already been said, but I'd like to underline a few more points. 1, with the quantity of water that the mine is planning to divert from their aquifer, it is inconceivable that there is not a connection with the larger hard rock aquifer system on the ridge. I would request that the burden of proof in the EIR be on the EIR to prove that there is not a connection or to delineate what that connection is. 2, groundwater hydrology in fractured rock systems is inherently uncertain, even with the best available technology for mapping and looking at where the flow of the waters is. I would like the EIR to specifically address the uncertainty in this process and give explicit levels of confidence in their conclusions that they draw about hard rock fractured water systems and the hydrology of the ridge. 3, we're very concerned about the economic effects of loss of water, both in quantity and quality. We'd request that the EIR examine what mitigations can be developed and put in place before the mine opens to be able to mitigate a worst-case scenario rapidly and smoothly to prevent any economic disruption. And lastly, I'd like the EIR and the county to recognize the inherent unfairness and disequilibrium inherent in this process. The applicant stands to gain substantially economic benefit if this mine opens and is willing to put tremendous resources into proving their case. Most of the people in this room have nothing to benefit from this mine and great things that they could lose. People in this room are asked to put in tremendous amounts of time and energy to bring their case to this, to counteract some of the things that the mine is saying. I would ask that the county and the EIR take this into account and allocate resources in sufficient quantity to thoroughly investigate the concerns that are brought by the citizens here tonight and in the subsequent things, and to take seriously their concerns and put the resources necessary into those concerns to investigate them. Thank you very much.
My name is Robert Shoemaker. Half of all of our workforce are on the dole, every single one of them. Mr. Callaway has another gold mine in Redding, and he's paying 40 people with very fine salaries. He can do the same on San Juan. I will bet that your neighbors would jump at a job of that opportunity. And do not follow in the footsteps of Grass Valley, what they have done. And just remember, everything that you have or use has started in mines. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bodie Busick. If the following sounds like idealistic and emotional plea from a concerned citizen, it's because it is. So I live on Shady Creek, a few miles downstream from the proposed mine. I lived in the community my whole life. I attended Grizzly Hill School myself. My father worked for the 16-to-1 mine when I was growing up, and my mother worked for the Twin Ridges School District. I want to say I care deeply for the health of the citizens in my community and for the health of all the species in our watershed. For the few facts I've been able to put together myself on the information that's available to us, I'm aware of the over $100,000 the school has paid since the opening of the mine, and the $7,000 a year it spends to clean its water since then. Add that to the amount that I believe the county is going to spend on this EIR, and I think we're looking at almost $500,000 of public money spent to see that our applicant here makes a profit. Though unconventional, it is my recommendation to those involved with this EIR to suggest in the document that this project be canceled immediately. Economic issues aside, this mine has posed serious health risks, and we've heard directly from those individuals tonight. We cannot call ourselves sane human beings and allow travesties like this in our backyards. The issue of environmental destruction, irreversible damage like extinctions and climate change is the defining global issue of our time. Personal profit at the expense of the world we give to future generations is something we have all been made painfully aware of. The fish in our rivers on the San Juan Ridge are inedible due to mercury. This is only one example of how we are dealing with the devastation that irresponsible mining has caused in the past. To allow more, especially projects already obviously contaminating waterways, is ridiculous. Unless the mine operator and county government could offer a 100% guarantee that this project would pose no health risk, it is immoral and foolish to allow this project to continue. No one with even a limited knowledge of geology could offer such a 100% guarantee. There is not at the moment the technology to predict how massive demolitions underneath the ground will affect surrounding water movement and contamination. An experienced miner will tell you there are no guarantees. As we can see from what happened last time, this scale of mining is like building a house of cards. Anyone who tries to assure us differently is obviously lying for their own personal benefit. We have a word for those who are willing to run the risk of endangering others for their own advantage. I will not utter that word here except to say they usually end up in court. There have been confirmed cases of aluminum poisoning in areas near the mine, and again we have heard from some of those individuals tonight. While we cannot confirm the Siscon mine caused it, neither can we confirm they did not. If Mr. Callaway wanted to build this mine downstream and far away from all populated areas, it would be only a matter of the fragile plant and non-human life it would affect. But this is a serious matter of human health. In today's Union, Mr. Calloway wrote an op-ed piece suggesting that the school's well was contaminated before he opened the mine in 1997, but also admitting that his project added to this contamination. Using this logic to justify one's actions is like a man who, when found dumping by the side of the road, says, "But officer, there was already an old mattress here, so I thought I could put this dryer here as well." Of course, a man who I want to say, in the name of science, civic responsibility, and above all for the health of our children, I recommend to those involved that this EIR call a spade, and declare this project unsafe, recommending its termination, as it benefits a very few for a very short time at the expense of those alive and for all generations to come. So, to those involved with making the decisions, I urge you, find your conscience and think about the legacy of public service that you leave behind you. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else?
Who could follow that?
Bodie's a tough one. I might add that neither one of the two of us here are making the decision to approve or deny the project. We're just simply doing the analysis for those decision makers. I see one more.
Hey, my name's Michael Foxley. I just want to bring this up that if there was any other private landowner that caused so much hardship and long-term pain, suffering, financial, health, and they would be taken from that property. That property would be taken from them, and any of that, the revenue that was generated from that property would go back to covering like the school or people's health or their wells, and how their property values were devalued. I just can't understand how we could make the same mistake twice, and when it has already proven itself that it's been a disaster the first time. It's like, isn't the definition of insanity trying the same thing twice and expecting a different result? I mean, it's just unfathomable that we're actually buttering up to the possibility of trying it again. I can't get that through my head why that's a good decision. Why, if I had made that kind of mess on my land and screwed up all my neighbors, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in jail. My land would probably be seized if I, and hopefully it would be, the revenue from it would be redistributed to help all those that I screwed over. That's what I gotta say.
Oh, okay, I'm not seeing anyone else moving, and there's 2 empty chairs. So with that, I guess. Oh. With that, I'd like to introduce the last speaker tonight.
Hi.
Hello.
I didn't really plan on saying something, so it will not be long and drawn out. My name's Kim Good, and I currently live at the end of Jackass Flats Road, which is very close to the proposed well. And it's been interesting listening to all of these comments that have been said, and also looking at the seal, the Nevada County seal that's right there. And I just want to point out that this is a whole different thing than gold panning. And driving in and out of Jackass Flats Road, we are acutely aware of what mining has done. Every single time we drive out, it's a moonscape, like you say, and that's looking at it pretty, you know. It's also been completely destroyed once. And so I just want you to think about that, to think about it's not gold panning in a little stream. It's already been hydraulically mined. It's already been completely devastated, and we're thinking about doing that. Not the same way, but we're thinking about letting that happen again, letting somebody go in and mine it again. And I also want to comment on the fact that I I'm not only a property owner, but I have 3 children. And I am very concerned about the quality of my water and the quality that my kids will be exposed to, not only in their drinking water, but also in their surrounding area. You know, they get the joy of living in the woods, and that will be disturbed. There will be an impact on that. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
My name is Roger Rawlings. I own Dept Farms on the top of the San Juan Ridge. If, God forbid, this is approved, how long is it going to take the mine, the county, to notify the people that live on the ridge that there has been a horrible mistake? That's all I have to say.
Okay. Again, I'd like to thank you all for participating, and I want to remind you that the official close of the notice of preparation will be at 5 o'clock on next Monday. That's December 10th. So if you have made oral comments this evening, those have been recorded, and we'll try our best to take them down. If you also have been reading those, I encourage you to submit those in written form, just so that there's no ambiguity between my printing and the notes or trying to recreate what was being said. That would be helpful, but if not, we'll get the comments anyway, and we will then set PMC on their way to start this fun task of trying to make sense of all this and start preparing a document that, again, will be up for review later on, and ultimately at some point in time the question will go before the actual decision makers, and we encourage you to participate in this process throughout. So I would like to thank you all again. Good evening.